Welcome to The Growth Shift, the podcast where we unlock the psychological and strategic blueprints of predictable growth. If you've built a successful business, you know the truth. Your expertise is high value, but your time is finite. The question is, how do you sustain that success without sacrificing your most valuable asset? We believe that the next level of success requires a strategic pivot, a fundamental shift that moves beyond the old ways. In every episode, we dive into the critical turning points of industry leaders and uncover how they're leveraging AI not as a shortcut, but as the strategic force for their next growth shift. Today, we dive in with a leader who is defining the future of their industry. This episode is brought to you by Valentix, your strategic growth partner. At Valentix, we believe that trust and authentic relationships are the only true currency in high-value business. We challenge the status quo by building an AI-powered client acquisition engine that enhances your human connection, helping you move beyond the slow growth of referrals. Our AI-powered systems eliminate the grind, allowing you to break through the noise, build high-value relationships, automate tasks, and free up your time to focus on transformative client impact. If you're ready to build a predictable growth engine, learn more at valentix.io. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we are joined by Al Betz, a seasoned entrepreneur, author, and communication expert, and the visionary behind Outfluence. Al's remarkable journey, spanning from building a highly profitable court reporting company to pivoting his focus entirely to communication and personal development, underscores his deep commitment to intentionality. As the author of multiple books, including Outfluence, Al now dedicates his expertise to helping small business owners master the art of effective communication, build strong relationships, and achieve alignment in their business. His unique focus on silent communication, silent messaging, and the critical importance of human connection will provide essential guidance for our audience. Al, welcome to The Growth Shift.
Good morning, David. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and your guests.
Appreciate having you on the show today, Al. You've got some excellent insights and a good story to share. Your career path, spanning from court reporting to building a highly profitable company, and now leading Outfluence as an author and communication expert, showcases a deep understanding of effective communication. Could you share what foundational experiences or principles from your early career ultimately led you to realize the profound impact of communication and relationship building in business?
Sure. Let me step back just a little bit further than that, David, to tell your audience and our friends where I came from a little bit. I grew up in a really small town in Pennsylvania. My parents were mill workers. My dad was a steel worker. My mom worked in a textile mill. So I had no exposure to business. I had no exposure to professionals. My early years were blue collar all the way. And then I met a lady who I've shared a life with for 60 years now. And her family was entrepreneurial. They were in business. And it really got me thinking about what I wanted to do for my life's work in order to keep her. We had fallen in love, and I knew I had to do more if we were going to have a happy life together. So that's really kind of what got things started, me thinking about a career in business. In about the 9th grade, I guess it was, somebody came to our high school from Baltimore, Maryland to talk about careers. And he talked about this court reporting career. And it looked like something I could do. And so I jumped in and went to Baltimore after graduation. And it turned out that I really had an aptitude for court reporting. And it turned into a hugely successful career. I was one of the best, really literally in the world at what I did. And it attracted a lot of high-profile business to me and my company. So that's kind of how things got started.
Now that's incredible. I think that this is shows the true power of something that everyone has heard before, right? You are the sum of the people you surround yourself with. So you grew up in a blue collar family with no exposure to entrepreneurship, probably the traditional mindset of work harder to earn more money, maybe not necessarily work smarter. And
right.
A young woman in your life opened your eyes, right? Just through the exposure to what her family was doing, right? You found something that was interesting following that, and then you became one of the leading experts in the world. Through this time and through your journey of building that first business, was there anything that led you to realize this profound impact of communication and relationship building within business?
Yeah, as I gained more and more exposure to lawyers and to judges and to politicians and listen to them talk and express their stories in representing their clients or whatever it was they were representing, I was just taken aback by the whole process and how interesting it was, and the way they prepared their presentations and the way they impacted a jury, for example, in a trial by their ability to tell a good story. So, I had no experience writing or telling stories or talking or anything. So the very first thing I did was I joined our state court reporting association, and I asked to be involved in writing the newsletter. And Kay, my wife, who was a very good writer, she helped me those early years to learn to write. And a few years later, I decided I wanted to write my first book, which was Polishing the Pearl. And that was all about how I got started in court reporting, how I became a professional. And then we went on from there. And I've written, I think I'm on my 8th book right now. And we've also written a curriculum for high school kids on communication and personal development and social responsibility. So I've come a long way from the blue collar days.
Well, absolutely. So this realization of the power in stories and of course communication through that really opened your mind to, the path you could pay forward for yourself by developing those skills, for yourself. So you built a really successful business, but ultimately you decided to leave court reporting. Right, that's a pretty big pivot in itself, but was there anything along your journey or through your journey that, led to this pivot and ultimately reshaped the direction you decided to go?
The first pivot that I can remember anyway, which was the most significant one really, during my days owning the court reporting company, when we started the company, we basically took on any customer that knocked on the door. And maybe a lot of companies start that way. I don't know, but that's how we started. We didn't give a whole lot of thought to it. As long as they paid the bills and we could pay our bills, we were happy. Well, over the course of time, we realized that some of the people we were working for really didn't appreciate what we did. And they evidenced that in a number of ways, including the way they treated our staff members and whatnot. And so we decided that we were going to pivot in the sense that we were looking for specific types of customers. We wanted customers that we liked and respected and who we thought liked and respected us. And that's basically how we pivoted. And it led to a totally different type of client with much bigger cases, many more dollars involved. And it just totally changed our business. It really doubled our revenues and made us all a lot happier for a lot of reasons.
This is a very important lesson for the audience, right? I mean, chasing a dollar or, a few dollars for the sake of a client isn't going to lead you to success, right? Especially if you're in a position where maybe your clients don't appreciate you, they're not treating you and your staff right on one side of things, but you don't really feel aligned and perhaps, maybe you don't really enjoy ultimately what you're doing. By specializing and really honing in on, what really sits well with you and, how you can serve the best clients in the best way is a great path to growth. So, these changes, of course, changed how it is that you were thinking about business and what you were doing. And you moved on from there. Today, you have Outfluence. Yes, and you're working with small business owners to improve and enhance their communication skills. Customer service falls into that as well, and I'm sure team cohesiveness. Can you explain a little bit about, what it is you're actually doing at Outfluence and how it is you're working with your clients in these ways?
Sure. The interesting thing, about being a court reporter is that we are known as the silent people in the courtroom. If you've ever watched a Senate hearing or anything like that, and if you see the court reporter at the table hitting that little machine, that's what they do. They're not supposed to speak. They have no involvement. They're just making the record. And so when you're doing that, people really don't know what I'm doing. They don't know how that machine works. They never have. And no matter how many times we explain it to them, they just don't get it, which is okay. We understand that. It's a different kind of communication. But my issue was, how do I let them know? How do I let people know that I'm different? We're not all the same. How do I do that? And so I developed my own style of communication by performing, although silently. I got my message out as to how I did my job and why they should hire me. For example, during recesses in proceedings, 10, 15 minutes, I would stay at the conference table, and I would prepare the file, which normally court reporters do in the evening. I would do it there. And people would say to me, aren't you going to take a break, Al? I said, well, no, I'm trying to get a little bit ahead of the game here for you. And those kinds of things, just those little messages that say, oh, okay, this guy's interested in me and what I need. And that's kind of where silent communication started. And then it was how I prepared my transcripts and what they looked like. I had many people tell me, Al, your transcripts look like novels. They read like novels. Because I put a little extra care in it. And it's those kinds of things, those little things I discovered people really paid attention to. Things that I thought they had no clue. They just didn't care. They noticed it, and they commented on it when they could. And they called me back, which is what I was looking for, return business. So then, that's what caused me to write this book. And then there was a chapter in this book about silent communicators. And people were really interested in it, and they wanted more information. So then I wrote this book and expanded on what I had written. More pages in there. And just shared a lot of information about how I did silent communication. I also, David, I went to a concert with Kenny G. Do you know who Kenny G is? Saxophone player.
The name's familiar. It's a jazz musician.
Yeah, I was a saxophonist and really, really, really talented. Very, very, very good. But we were sitting in the very first row for this concert, so I got to watch him. And I watched the way, while he was playing, he was making contact with everybody in the audience, making eye contact. And he had a way of smiling while he was playing. And he used his eyes to communicate with people. It was just fascinating to me, the whole way he did that. And of course, what he was doing was setting the folks up for after the performance sales, back in the back, where the books and the hats and the shirts and all those items were being sold. And I thought, well, that's very interesting, the way he's doing that. How can I apply that to my work as a court reporter? And so again, more opportunities to be a silent communicator. For example, as a court reporter, reporting the deposition of a very technical witness, talking about some new scientific development or whatever. Of course, everybody's wondering, gosh, is that court reporter getting it? Or is this transcript going to be worth reading later on? And so what I would do is I would look up, instead of looking at the machine, I would look up at the witness and I would just kind of nod, indicating I was tracking him. I was getting what was going on. Of course, everybody else in the room saw me doing that as well. Comforted them, put them at ease, and life was good.
Yeah, amazing. So Al, through your time as a top performing court reporter, it seems like you almost stumbled upon this method of silent communication, nonverbal communication, right? You saw the strengths in it, not just through what you were doing in the courtroom, but through what other well-known people, especially the jazz musician you mentioned, was doing to enhance this as well. So you identified perhaps some key points of how it is you can build trust, right? Build intrigue and build relationships without even needing to say a word, right? Through the silent communication. And now you work with your clients in Outfluence to help them develop and instill similar practices for, of course, delivering better services and trust with their clients. So for the audience sitting here listening and thinking, what does that look like? How can I do this for myself? Do you have any pointers or tips or advice for people as starting points in terms of developing their silent communication skills?
One of the things that I did a few years after I got this developing was I sat down with some of my key clients and I said, what are three things that you really like about what we do, what I do as a reporter? What are the most important three things that you want to make sure that we do? And a lot of them were just silent communicating things that didn't require even being at the keyboard. They liked, for example, the fact that I always said yes, no matter what it was. If they needed something at the last minute, it was always yes. I always delivered. So I was very responsive to them. That was one of the things that they liked. If we did make a mistake, we corrected it right away. We owned up to it and we corrected it. And they appreciated that very much. And just the fact that we delivered what we said we were going to deliver. They knew they could count on it. Those were silent little communicators and I had a lot of lawyers who said, Al, we use you because we know you're going to deliver. That's why you get the big cases. That's why it works. I had a local lawyer, local to Baltimore, who had a client with a huge case out of New York. And he had some depositions to take in Baltimore. And when lawyers come in from out of town, they have to find a local lawyer who vouches for them in front of the court. Say, yeah, these guys are okay. They can practice in this court. So that happened. And my client called me one day and he said, Al, I'm working on this matter for this law firm out of New York. They've been using a nationwide court reporting firm, but they're unhappy with the service they're getting. Can you do what you do for me for them? I said, sure, absolutely. Make a long story short, that was worth over $1 million, that case. And that was in 10 years of service, providing the same thing day after day, putting him at ease. He felt comfortable because if I had screwed up, he would have lost, he himself, his firm would have lost a big client as well. So he was putting his trust in me. And again, it's all part of the silent communicators and the way we performed. So I don't know if I just answered your question or not, David.
That's all right. So I think the biggest takeaway for the audience here is probably pay close attention to your interactions, right? And those nonverbal ones as well. What do you do to display your level of competence so that the trust can be built, right? So that you get to that point where people know without even necessarily speaking to you or asking why, although of course I'm sure many lawyers are going to be able to pinpoint exactly why they trust you and the reason for that. But for, engaging with your clients, right? Those small and subtle actions that may be nonverbal, but will just display your extra level of care and attention, right? Care for them, attention to their needs and beyond, which
part of the silent communication, David, I call constant messaging. And that goes well beyond just performing on the job. It's how you treat other people. It's how you dress. It's the things that you read, the things that you watch, because all of those things, usually at the worst time, depending on what you're watching or reading, will come out in your conversation. And it's either going to make you look good or it's going to make you look bad. It's going to indicate really who you are. So you really want to be careful of your messaging. If you're a person who wears a lot of jewelry and you're pretty flashy, well, that tells people something about you. And particularly when you're dealing with lawyers, in my case, most of the time they're very conservative people and they don't like the flash. And so you have to be careful of that. Organizations that you belong to, make sure that they are legit and they're honorable and people respect them. Because it all says something about you. It's all sending a constant message all the time.
Sounds like there's a mix here of conscious, let's say, messaging and positioning, but also your conscious actions probably influence people very much subconsciously as well. So it's that blend of, what can I control and what can I do to create the best outward image of myself and understand those subtle subconscious triggers that might catch other people to signal that, hey, yeah, this is someone who should be respected, can be trusted, is worthy of my attention and of my time. This is extremely important and extremely valuable. As you indicated with the massive case that you landed through a referral, right? Your effectiveness of building trust and credibility in your own clients led to a massive opportunity for you. Now, a lot of coaches and consultants are in a similar privileged position, let's say, where they've had great results with their clients, they've built great trust, and they get great referrals as well. But when we start looking at some of the challenges that brings, perhaps good challenges to have, is that client acquisition itself can become challenging and unpredictable with less control, right? Referrals are great, but how do we move beyond that? Especially into today's world, right? There's a lot of pretty significant challenges that coaches and consultants are up against to land similar clients as they get through referrals, right? There's a lot of noise in the market. There's a huge trust deficit. Given that your work with Outfluence hinges entirely on effective communication and building trust through these ways, what do you see as the most impactful challenges when it comes to predictably acquiring new clients beyond, let's say, perhaps referrals?
I heard a long time ago that the McDonald's Corporation, the burger people, the hamburgers, McDonald's, they marketed to the kids because they knew if they got them early, they were going to be customers for life. I know that was true for me, and so I have kind of parlayed that into what I do. My wife and I have created a curriculum, if you will, for high school students that we teach in the schools. So we're starting early in terms of developing our clients. We're getting to know these kids when they're kids, so that as they grow older, they're going to remember what we taught them. And we're starting to see that now. Some kids are starting to they maintain the relationship, and so that has worked very well for us. I do a fair amount of speaking. As you know, I'm doing a lot of writing. I do a lot of posting on social media. And again, that's a whole new story there in terms of posting on social media and your behavior on social media. Assume everybody sees what you're putting out there. So you got to be careful about that. The huge silent communicator.
Mm.
So that's how one avenue for me to stay in front of people. And again, by staying in front of the kids and teaching the kids, of course, the parents are looking. And some of those parents are potential business relationships for me. So that's a huge thing. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. It's very fulfilling because you're helping your community. It's huge. Find ways to help your community.
Yeah, planting these seeds now for the future is an incredible way of maintaining, or let's say, investing in long-term opportunity, and of course, as you said, fulfilling as well, working with the younger generation, giving them tools and knowledge and skills that will equip them in the beginning of their journey. Maybe it'll get them there faster, where they'd want to work with you as a consultant as well, or also increase their earning ability and their capability over time. So Al, when we look at at today and the immediate, what sort of challenges for an established consultant such as yourself, who gets incredible results for their clients, what sort of challenges are you up against with immediate client acquisition in the market, and how are you tackling those challenges today? You're mentioning social media, you're mentioning speaking engagements. What does your client acquisition look like for the near future? And those challenges, how are you breaking through the market noise? How are you effectively building trust to bring in new clients today?
Yeah, it's difficult. I can tell you that for the schools that we're trying to get into, there's so many changes. Since COVID and some of the craziness, that's my term, some of the craziness that's going on in the school systems, it's difficult to break in. So we've got a big program. It's a 30-session program, and I'm finding ways now to reduce it so that I can maybe, where the school may not want to bother with a 30-session program, no matter how good it is. It's just too much to be able to fit in. Some schools do, a lot don't. So we're breaking that down into smaller bites so that I can go, for example, to the principal in the school rather than the school board, and I can get a good decision on what I'm trying to do through the principal. It's just a lot easier path. So I'm trying to find new paths. That's one of the things that we need to do.
Finding new paths is critical, especially in today's world, right? A lot of people are still trying to leverage and use outdated tools to solve modern problems, right? I love what you're doing, going directly to the principal. I mean, you could go knock on a door, chat to the principal with the reputation that you have, and if you can provide something of value and draw people in based off of that with not necessarily any immediate ask, but show them, hey, like, this is something that could be beneficial to you. Not asking anything yet, but if there's value there for you, maybe we can continue the conversation, right? So those creative ways. I actually got an email myself the other day in a creative way that I thought was interesting. I opened it, I read it, and I considered it, but their targeting was off, so it didn't make sense for me. And that ask was, hey, I'll buy you a pizza. You want a pizza? I'll buy you a pizza. All I'm asking is, let's jump on a discovery call. Would love to show you our product. Whether or not it makes sense for you or not, we'll buy you a pizza, and there's that. So I'm getting something immediate out of it if I like pizza, and if their targeting was right. I loved that myself. So the creative approaches to getting in the door are definitely the most valuable.
If we have a minute, David, I'll tell you one other story, and this has to do with social media. After I wrote the Outfluence book, I got a call from somebody representing a gentleman who had a radio show. He was based in Kansas City. I'm in Maryland. And he liked the Outfluence book. So he wanted to interview me. I said, sure, that would be terrific. And the gentleman who was doing the interviewing was a former Silicon Valley technology executive, way beyond anything that I could hope to achieve. I had no background in that field. So anyway, we had a great interview. And I made it my business to stay in touch with him. Whether he wanted me to stay in touch with him or not, I don't know. But I did. And I just kept showing up for him. I would listen to his radio shows going forward, and I would write him a note saying, oh, I love this guest. I love what he said. Things like that. I would just, very positive. Eventually, he called me and he said, Al, would you be willing to come to Kansas City and sit down with me live for an interview? I said, sure. So we did. The relationship went on, and eventually one day he called me. He said, Al, I have this new venture called Identimap. I think you'd be a perfect fit for it. So he invited me into his business. And it was a tremendous opportunity. And just to take this a little further down the line a little bit, after I had been working with him for a while, I said to him, Bob, why did you bring me into your company? And he said, Al, because you just kept showing up. That's exactly what he said. You just kept showing up. Now, what was happening while I was showing up was he was making decisions about me. He has this acronym, I guess is the right word for it, TIC, T-I-C. When he's considering somebody to join his company, he's looking for their tenacity, their integrity, and their creativity. And apparently he saw that in me, which is why he then asked me to join his company. So, I mean, that was worth its weight in gold to me, that whole process, learning from him how because I didn't do that. I didn't have that training. Maybe they trained that in colleges, which I didn't go to. I don't know. David, you could probably tell me that. But
I don't think they teach those things in college these days, if ever.
But it was just wonderful to learn from him. And then as we've gone through, he's real big on pivoting. You know, if something's not working, he's right on to the next thing. And I learned a lot about pivoting from him. I mean, for example, we were selling some of our products on Identimap as individual products, and they weren't really selling very well. Bob said, no more of that. From now on, if people want our products, they've got to be willing to sign a license, and we'll license them all of our products for a reasonable fee. And so that's what we've been doing, and we've begun to have some success doing that. So he's not afraid to pivot and try something new if things aren't working. And it was interesting to watch his process to do that. So
yeah, just another great testament and example of how showing up, you know, not just keeping yourself top of mind, but, you know, showing your ideal client or target audience, you know, how far you're willing to go, right? What you're willing to do for them before asking for anything in return, right? Because by giving and giving and giving, people will then start asking, hey, what can I pay you for? If you're giving me so much at no ask and no cost, I mean, can only imagine how much value I'd get if I paid you. You mentioned pivoting a couple of times now, and, you know, there's a big pivot that all business owners are needing to go through to stay relevant. It's that pivot to AI, right? You know, with your experience with pivoting, with business systems, where does AI start to come into play for you, and how are you leveraging it to get the greatest opportunity?
Well, I've been using AI for, I don't know, a year and a half or so, I guess, something like that. I use ChatGPT. I've tried some of the other ones. Chat works well for what I'm doing right now. I use it to help me in writing some of my articles. You know, I'll write something and ask Chat to kind of take a look at it and either tone it down or make it sound more professional or whatever. And it's been great. I mean, I absolutely love it. It really is very good that way. I attended a webinar, I guess you'd call it. They called it an AI summit last week. And I learned something that's really going to be helpful to me. And I wrote some notes down, so forgive me for referring to this, but I think it would be helpful. This lady talked about her social media work. And she said, the old way I used to do this, and the way some of us probably still do it, is, you know, if we're looking for inspiration to write an article on a certain topic, we're searching for that inspiration, and we're copying and pasting whatever we find, and we save it in our ideas folder, and then that takes hours to do that, of course, and then you begin to create your own content from what you learn, so you create one piece. The new way, using AI, is AI can analyze all of this data for you in the background while I'm doing something else. So you're saving time. Number one, you can do more. But what you have to do to make AI be effective is you have to train AI to know everything about you and your business. And the way you do it is by prompting it, okay? I hope I'm not being too basic here for the audience who probably already know these things.
Sometimes it's good to take things back to basics, right? Because if we're not practicing the footwork day in and day out, it's really easy to forget, you know what you should be doing. It's easy to overlook those things, especially when you become comfortable. And, you know, let's say in the case of AI, if you're letting it take care of so much, then you can start to forget that, hey, you know, I really need to have these fundamentals down. So I'll please continue.
But building through prompts, building the knowledge base, if you will, of your AI partner. And that's what I've been doing for the last year and a half, because now when I put something up, it'll refer back to something we talked about some time ago, and it'll tell me, well, Al, you talked about this and you did this and you did that, and it would be good to do this now. Now, because you can't just follow what AI tells you, you got to do your own homework and your own research and make sure it's being accurate. We've all heard the old story about the lawyer who filed a brief in court using citations that AI gave him but didn't exist. So that's not so good.
And on this, on prompting and making sure you're getting the right out of the system that you're training, as you said, Al, sometimes it comes back with things that maybe aren't wholly accurate, aren't wholly true, or maybe it's just being agreeable and saying that, hey, this is what we should do based off of X.
Right.
Now, how to enhance that and take it the next level up for yourself and for the audience as well. It's not just by prompting it and giving it that knowledge base of information, but giving it specific instructions. You will not be agreeable for the sake of being agreeable. You will challenge my thinking and validate it with me. Right? Yep. You can even take it a step beyond that as well and say, perhaps creating a couple of different AI agents, or if you're using chat, a couple of, different specific chats set up within that, and saying, you will be a strategic thinker on the level of Warren Buffett, any top business leader. Go and choose a couple of specific people you admire, you appreciate how they do business, and set up your AI to imitate them and to provide you with advice, not just give you feedback, but to challenge your thinking as a collaborator, so that it's not just, giving you a yes, saying, oh, this is great, you're so fantastic, I love how you did this, right? But this way you can also develop your strategic thinking as well as your critical thinking a little bit further, rather than just risking losing that for sake of relinquishing it all to AI.
Good point. Good points. Absolutely. But the beauty of AI and what I'm doing with social media and stuff, it can at least give me a foundation of maybe 4 or 5 articles that I can then go through, but it can start it for me based on, as you say, specific prompts. And so I found it to be a time saver. It's been effective for me as long as I'm, as you say, doing my own homework on it.
So you mentioned that you're working with the younger generations today, right? You're going into schools, you're providing with programs, you're working with them on effective communication skills. The younger generation especially are very reliant on technology. From your perspective, what are the primary risks and opportunities of integrating AI into the communication landscape, especially for people who are so heavily reliant on it?
Yeah, we have a session on AI, and we don't do anything more than drill down on the fact that AI is a tool. It's not an advisor. You can't just follow what it tells you to do. We want to make sure the kids totally understand that. And beyond that, it's going to be up to the school systems or hopefully the parents to guide their kids in AI. Right now, that's all we're doing is making sure that they get the fact that it's not an advisor. It's not taking the place of your parents or your teacher. It's just a tool that can help you get from A to B.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? Because if you're just asking questions expecting to get the right answer, there's a lot of danger and risk there, especially for the younger generation. But keep in mind that AI generates content from what it can find, and there's AI generated content is far surpassing human generated content these days. So not only is it eating its own tail and creating content based off of what it's creating, but it could take anything from anywhere. And unless you're very particular about the inputs and very specific what you want to get as a result, then you don't really know what that advice is going to be, right? And whether or not it's truly advice. So making the leap from, working with children on their thoughts and their communication and, that intersection of AI, when we look at business leaders, right, the types of people that you work with, what advice would you give leaders on how to use AI to enhance rather than hinder genuine human connection?
I mean, really, David, other than what I've said, I mean, that's the extent of my experience with it.
Yeah.
And I've used it just simply to help me generate some social media articles and save some time. As I say, I still then have to review it and go over it, but it does save me the time of the initial effort. And that, as you say, the quality of that relies on the prompting that I do. So learning how to properly prompt it, you just have to do it and gain some experience with it.
Yeah, and we could look back on the conversation we had previously as well about just making sure that you're using the right prompts and you're giving it the right information to get what you're really looking for. So your insights into communication, relationship building, and the power of intentionality are truly inspiring. To conclude, based on your philosophy of, focusing on who you enjoy doing business with and the importance of effective communication, what's the single most important piece of advice that you leave with our audience who are striving to build resilient, successful businesses in today's demanding market?
First, well, you got to know who you are, number one. Know who you are, and then you got to know who they are also. And one way to do that, can I put something up? Can I show
Please do.
Let me just, I'm not sure if you can see that. Can you see what I put up?
Not just yet. If you should be able to share screen on the bottom right, and we'll cut out all of this brief conversation so it goes from let me share something to seeing it on the screen.
Oh, there it is.
Figure out the share, no problem.
It was hidden there. Share screen. There we go. All right. I'm not doing this well. I'm not going to put it up there.
Yeah, no problem at all. We'll back up there. But yeah. So Ed, what's that piece of advice that you'd leave with our audience?
The best piece of advice really is to recognize that there's a time for planting, there's a time for growth, and there's a time for harvesting. Make sure you know which time you're in, and keep your ego in check, keep your emotions in check and under control, and make beneficial decisions. And also be patient. One thing Bob Sherwood told me, who's my Identibat partner, he said, Al, sometimes it takes as much as 10 years to bring an idea to fruition. So and he's absolutely right. I mean, I've lived that. And so be patient and make beneficial decisions. Take your time.
Patience, the key thing here, right? You said plant, grow, and then harvest. If we look at patience and how quickly you can grow, or how quickly you can harvest, or the extent of the harvest with the right growing time, if you think about how bamboo grows, right, for something like 7 to 9 years, it's just growing underground. You're not seeing a thing. The network of roots are growing deeper and wider, and that foundation is there. And in just a few weeks after the appropriate, seeding time, let's say, bamboo can shoot up feet per day, right? So give it the right time, give it the right patience in the harvest, and the yield will be fantastic. Al, thank you so much for joining us on the Growth Shift today. For any of our audience who might like to learn more about what you're doing or to perhaps find one of your books, what would be the best way to find you online?
Sure. Outfluence.com is the best way. Just go to our website.
Excellent.
That's the best way to find us.
Al, thank you again for joining us on the Growth Shift today.
Thank you, David. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Another powerful conversation on the Growth Shift. If you, like our guests, are ready to turn your expertise into a predictable, scalable growth engine, one that eliminates the grind of prospecting and enhances your high-value relationships, then it's time to connect with Valentix. We are not a marketing agency. We are your strategic growth partner, building intelligent systems that ensure your client acquisition is predictable, not dependent on chance. To see how our AI-powered frameworks can free up your time and fill your calendar with decision makers, visit valentix.io. Thank you for joining us on the Growth Shift. We'll see you next time.